Hi, this is Otto Miniature Home G. Think about the last time you walked into someone's home for the first time. Before they said a single word, you knew things about them: the stack of their books on the nightstand, the half finished painting in the corner, the three different versions of a resume open on their laptop. You were reading them not through what they chose to tell you, but what they chose to keep. Now imagine doing that with an entire file system. That's what File Archaeology Protocol does. Every profiling tool that exists today has the same fundamental flaw. It only looks at one version of you. A personality test captures what you're willing to admit. A resume captures what you want an institution to believe. Your journal captures what you tell yourself at 2 a.m. These are three completely different people, and they're all you. No tool on the market triangulates those layers. Background checks are shallow. Social media scraping only sees the mask. Personality tests are self-reported and gameable. Even a therapist needs years to get to where we can get to in minutes. The insight is simple. Your file system is a fossil record of your thinking. You curate your conversations, your LinkedIn, your dating profile, but nobody curates their desktop in unorganized folders with the same intentionality. That gap between what you'd volunteer and what actually lives on your hard drive, that's the ground truth. So here's what I'd want you to think about. What the system does. So you basically see that it's an 11-phase pipeline, and the best analogy is walking into a stranger's library. Imagine you walk into a room full of bookshelves. You've never met the person that owns them, but by the time you leave, you're going to understand them better than most of their friends do. So let me start the program. First, I'm going to start the program over here. Then I'm going to turn on the Ollama server, which uses an open source model. So for this demo, I'm going to show you what was on the local file system from the demo data folder. But the system already also has the ability to check the local system as well as your Google Drive, or both. So first of all, you can't spell Palantir without pal. So this is basically a Palantir for making new friendships. So I'm going to choose option 3 to use Ollama, which is local, free, and requires Ollama running. But if you want to use OpenAI or Anthropic, all you have to put in is an API key. So I'm going to choose the model over here. You can see that there was a GET request already for hitting the Ollama server, and I'm going to process locally. So first, you can see phase 1 was establishing the surface presentation, where you walk into the room and you haven't touched a single book yet. You're just looking. So it's kind of like a doorway glance. We capture the top level directory listing, which folders exist, what's the basic shape of this person's digital life. It's kind of the equivalent of noticing, okay, there are 6 bookshelves, a desk, and a pile on the floor. So phase 2 goes a little bit deeper. We start to analyze the file system structure and collect metadata on every file. So the names, the sizes, the timestamps, the extensions, the locations. We're not reading anything yet. We're just cataloging every book on a shelf. Every book on every shelf. So they're basically their spine, their thickness, how worn it is, whether it's filed neatly or tossed in a pile. It's just pure observation. No AI, no interpretation, just the raw shape of someone's digital world. From an engineering standpoint, we have a file system analyzer that walks the directory tree and builds file metadata objects for every file and dumps the whole thing in structured JSON. It also supports Google Drive as a source, as I mentioned earlier, so the bookshelf can extend into the cloud. As you can see, this is a open source model running on an M1 Mac, so it's taking its time. But during phase 3, we start reading the spines. We haven't opened a single book yet, but we're already forming theories. So it says this person has, for example, 3 shelves of philosophy, 1 shelf of tax law. There's a worn copy of Meditations next to a stack of job applications. The journal on the nightstand has been opened recently, but the self-help books are dusty. That's the kind of insights, as you can see here, with the initial hypotheses from phase 3 of the demo data. So we need that to understand some testable hypotheses about the person, so their identity domains, their life stages, signals, their cognitive style, etc. The keyword is testable, so each hypothesis predicts something we should be able to observe later after we actually read some of the books. So the scoring engine flags the interesting files, and basically the LLM hasn't read a single file yet. It's just inferring from pattern alone. But phase 4 here, it's actually deciding which files to read. So here it's reading understanding of truth, the resume, and some set of principles, which essentially the file scorer runs a deterministic scoring model. So there's points for emotional keywords, philosophical keywords, institutional and formal keywords. There are points for the size of the file and where unusual locations, as well as how often they were opened. And it picks, based on these 3 layers, the unguarded moment, which is the kind of like the book that fell behind the nightstand, like a journal entry or a late night note or a draft that was never sent. The book on display, like a resume, cover letter, grant proposal, and the foundational framework, which is the book with the most underlined passages, kind of like a manifesto, a philosophy document, or a set of principles, which is the core of the methodology, taking 3 lenses on one person. With phase 5, we actually open the books and read them. So phase 5 right now, what's going on is it's extracted these characters and it's trying to triangulate the reading the PDFs, the Word documents using PDF to text and Pandoc. So some Python libraries where the metadata turns into meaning. So from judging a book by its cover to reading the actual pages. Each file's content is saved with its selection, reasoning, and relevance score, which creates a complete audit trail of why this file was chosen and what it contains. Now, in phase 6, this is where things kind of get a little bit interesting. Let's see here. Here there's a triangulation where we've read all 3 books and lay them side by side. The person's journal may say that they distrust institutions. Their cover letter says they're a passionate team player who thrives in collaborative environments. And their philosophy document might just say something like, individual sovereignty is a foundational principle. Phase 6 maps how core concepts translate across layers. The large language model identifies 5 to 10 beliefs that appear in multiple layers and then traces how those beliefs change shape depending on the audience. Raw conviction in layer 1 becomes diplomatic language in layer 2, which becomes abstract theory in layer 3. It also finds the strategic omissions, what shows up in the journal and the philosophy doc, but carefully gets scrubbed from the resume. That gap is the signal. So you can see here the strategic omissions, etc. Here in phase 7, most tools try to flatten you into a category. For example, Myers-Briggs says you're an INTJ, a background check says you're employed, LinkedIn says you're a visionary leader, but we do the opposite. Phase 7 maps the contradictions and treats them as features, not bugs. The system looks for 4 types. Simultaneous opposition, which is building an anti-institutional tools while applying to institutions. A temporal paradox, which is kind of preparing for collapse while trying to prevent it. Identity multiplicity, which is being fundamentally different people in different contexts, and resource allocation mismatch. So where your time goes versus what you say matters. The key design principle, and this is critical, is that contradictions don't get resolved. They get explained. How this person's contradictions actually a functional strategy, that's the question. Because people aren't consistent, they're complex, and the contradictions are the operating system. So here we can see some of the contradictions. For example, authenticity versus institutional acceptance, complexity is camouflage, etc. So now we're in phase 8 where we're checking the work. So as you can see, good science makes predictions and then tests them using the scientific method. So do we. Phase 8 takes everything we've synthesized and generates 8 to 10 specific predictions. So if our thesis is correct, we should see X in the file system, and then it checks each prediction against the actual file data. Each prediction gets scored, either confirmed, partial, or contradicted. The system calculates the confidence score from 0 to 1. If 8 out of 10 predictions land, we're at high confidence. If fewer than 6 land, we're at low confidence, and openly say so. This is intellectual honesty built into the architecture. We don't just generate narratives, we validate them. So as we wait for phase 8 to generate over here, phase 9 is essentially going to be a unified theory, which I'll wait to first show phase 8. It's taking a little bit of time because it's checking basically the covers of the bookshelf against the read of everything that they've said. So let's see here. For example, if the operating system values pragmatism and adaptability, then we should observe files with pragmatic solutions. So that was confirmed. Files with financial keywords, there wasn't much of a finance focus. The operating system values flexibility. So kind of that's what's happening. So phase 9 is taking everything, which is the triangulation, the contradictions, and the validated predictions, and synthesizing that into a unified meta pattern. So the output follows a specific structure. Person X is not what they present on the surface. Person is actually deeper pattern because of the evidence as surrounded. So it identifies the fundamental axiom driving this person's behavior, how that axiom manifests differently across contexts, and what it predicts about future decisions. This is the aha moment, the thing you didn't know about yourself, articulated clearly with evidence. So as we wait here, we can see that the confidence score for this is between 85 to 70. So there's a strong alignment based on that original data set that I showed you. So phase 9, the core thesis is that this person is not just a pragmatic problem solver who navigates complex systems and institutions. They are actually an adept operator who values flexibility, adaptability, and strategic planning in navigating different social contexts. So here's the evidence. Now, phase 10, and this is some of the magic where we do something that no other profiling tool does. We say, given everything we know about this person, their values, their contradictions, their communication style, their emotional needs, what does their ideal best friend look like? So phase 10 generates a friend archetype, a name, core traits, how they'd support this person, where friction might arise, and how to build trust. This isn't matchmaking, it's a mirror. It tells you what kind of connection you're actually wired for, which may be very different from what you think you want. Yeah, this runs a lot faster if you use OpenAI or you use Anthropic. So here's the best friend archetype. So kind of the best friend type, it's like an architect, so like kind of a strategic thinker, pragmatic problem solver, institutional navigator. So given what we know about this person, this person might struggle sometimes with the architect being a little bit more formal, which is they're more raw and unfiltered. They might not understand their critiques of institutions, but the best way to build trust is open communication, active listening, and shared goals. So now it's generating the final report, which is a synthesis of everything, and you can see it took about 10 minutes to run. And every phase's output is sit as a time-stamped artifact that you can revisit. So the whole pipeline from scanning to final report runs end-to-end. You point it at a directory, choose your LLM provider, and walk away, and you come back to a document that knows you better than your LinkedIn bio does. So So here we can see the archaeology outputs. So let's see which one's older. I think this one let's see here, 0, 2, 4, 0, 3. So if I go to the final report, we can kind of like do a deep dive in here and understand kind of the profile of the person a little bit better. And here's a really rich data set. So that's what exists today. There are 11 phases, 3 layers, and 1 unified profile. But here's where it gets really exciting. So right now, this is a self-knowledge tool. You can run it on your own files and learn about yourself, which is extremely valuable. But the real unlock happens when you run it on 2 people or multiple people. If we can build a deep contradiction-preserving multi-layered profile of 1 person, we can build it for 2. And if we can have 2, we can build it for 4, which allows people to not flatten their complexity into categories and actually preserve the weird, beautiful, contradictory mess of being human. Not like you both like hiking, you're both a Sagittarius, but you both process institutional distrust through creative work. Your contradiction patterns are complementary, and the thing you hide from LinkedIn is the thing the other person leads with. That's how you find real friendship, not surface compatibility. Structural resonance. Imagine a world instead of swiping on photos or answering multiple choice personality questions and quizzes, you could find people who actually get you because the matching happened at the level of your operating system, not your profile picture. And look, as I mentioned at the beginning, you can't spell pal without P-A-L. You know what else starts with pal? Palantir. And wouldn't it be something if the same government that has all this data on us, the metadata, the patterns, the digital footprints, used it to connect people instead of just surveilling them? Like, hey, we noticed you and this person in Omaha have this weirdly complementary contradiction patterns. You guys should get coffee. Instead of a watch list, a friendship list. I'm only half kidding. So the file archaeology protocol treats your file system as a fossil record of your thinking. It doesn't ask who you are. It looks at what you've actually done, what you've actually written, what you've actually saved, and tells you who you've been becoming. 11 phases, 3 layers, and the contradictions are features, not bugs. And the best version of this technology doesn't just help you understand yourself, it helps you find your people. Thank you.